sober? And he said, Mary, you asked too many questions. I hope I'm never satisfied. Yeah, I hope I'm never satisfied. And it feels so good to be misunderstood. It feels so good to be misunderstood. It feels so good to be misunderstood. Yeah, it feels so good. Yeah, it feels so good.
Sniffing Molly off amps with blind hair tramps. When I'm on my way to the stage every night, I rage. Got me a white girl, till her face.
Redheads, give me that bad head. Yeah, I told Becky to give me that.
2 white cups full of codeine. Plus I got 2 white sluts down to blow me.
Okay, let's talk about Eilish. Mansion out in Dallas. Like to sniff white.
Like a motherfucking cracker, bitch. What you know about it? Take notes in the back with a stove, buddy.
3 bad white hoes, all you helping.
White girls too. Ooh, Julie.
On that molly. Dolly on that molly.
Hello?
Hello, can I speak to Julie?
On that molly.
Speaking.
You tell Becky to pick up the phone.
Hello?
I need that bacon. I'm on this liquor, oh so heavy. Before we fuck, can you naked? Lift that head and I am ready. I want your mind. Give me that bacon. Keep that foot.
That is the best song.
So would y'all do a threesome with Gucci Mane?
Oh yeah! Hell yeah! Me, Christina, and Gucci Mane would do a threesome with Gucci Mane.
Pull a bunch of these white bitches, I'm chillin' hard at the ping pong. This Gucci Man and
Hilton. Bitch, I'm Paris Hilton.
Fucked a couple of them Barbies.
move like the Kardashians.
Hey, do you have any black inside you? All you gotta do is ask Lindsay Lohan.
Nigga, cocaine connoisseur, white bitch carnivore.
Look, Susie wanna fuck me, and Becky tryna suck me. Sarah wanna lick me, but
Right, nigga, I know 3, y'all know me. Smoking
paper jets, wood up, blonde and brunette. They stone blow, I'm double cup.
Drunk white girls, the only way I'll get my dick sucked like
Coking white bitch, guess where I met her at? Eating Oreos like these white girls that blow me. Vodka for my ladies. Nikki, what you think? I got 2 white Russians, but we also need some drinks.
The girls in Moscow, usually the girls here who like black people or black men are really into black men.
Tiger Montana, got a white bitch named Hannah.
My white bitch trippin', she saying they ain't playing for.
If you gon' tell them something, you should tell them this.
Had a few white girls and some Spanish shit.
Oh my God, Becky, look at her. White hoes love nigga dick.
Hello. Welcome to another week of A-Cups. I'm Angela Washko, your host. Ann Hirsch is on vacation yet again, but I'm here in the studio with arts administrators, artists, and curators, Michelle Levy and Sally Szwed.
Hey there. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for coming. It sounds like we have somebody talking again in the studio next door. This happens from time to time. I'm sorry if anybody feels a little bit uncomfortable with it. We'll try and keep going.
I'm fine with it. It's, as long as she doesn't start speaking directly to me.
Okay. That's fair. So I want to let you both have a chance to talk about yourselves in a second, but I wanted to start off first talking a little bit about the audio art piece we just listened to by Nate Hill called White Girl Supercut. Nate Hill was actually our first guest on A-Cups, but the piece we listened to mashes up moments from 37 different songs in which white girls are addressed. Do you guys have any thoughts on the piece off the bat?
I feel somewhat speechless, I have to say. It's completely... I feel like I've been violated over and over and over again in my ears. So
from that, okay.
Oh, yeah.
I'm wondering if there are any examples of references to white women in rap songs that are actually positive and not derogatory. Because, I mean, they have to be out there somewhere.
Yeah.
But, I mean, a lot of those are saying... how do you define positive, then, I guess?
Well, that's a good... I mean, I think that in most of, again, that was a very short amount of time to listen to 37 references, and maybe I missed something, but it seemed that, most of them alluded to, white women being easy or, performing certain sexual acts that black women may not be partial to, which is something that, I think is a pretty common stereotype.
Right.
So, and it seemed as though, I think in a lot of these songs, all types of women are objectified, but at least in those specific clips, they were, it was clearly a situation where they were talking about the women as sluts or sexual objects or, conquests of a different kind,
Right.
Well, there was, I felt like in a lot of cases there was just hatefulness in there, it wasn't just, I didn't feel like it was just talking about like, ooh, sexy women, but it was really hateful.
I think some of that is true, but I also felt like there was an overtone of like a white woman being something of value or something of like a status thing to get,
a status
or something.
Thing, sure, yeah. So that reminds me of a situation or a conversation I overheard the other day walking down the street in Brooklyn, and I was just on my way home from work, kind of minding my own business, but I was walking behind, two African American men who were talking about a series of potential love interests or conquests, and one guy turned to the other guy and threw out a name. What about I forget what name it was, and his response was like, I'm done with black women. They're too easy. Like I want to only date white women from now on. And I just thought that was strange. Yeah.
I mean, how do you? I mean, I don't want to get too personal, but like, do you ever experience any sort of strange reactions to you date a black man, and do you ever have like, I don't know, is anybody ever responding to that in a weird way?
I mean, sometimes I think living in New York City, working and, spending most of my time amongst other people in the art world where, things are pretty open-minded. But I definitely have experiences where, if we're together, we might get, I usually find that there are dirty looks from black women, and then sometimes like the, nonverbal or, high five from black men, usually. But, I think that the responses are different, and I don't pay attention to it very much, to be honest. I don't like fixate on that at all. Right. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you just notice, but I don't think it's something that I keep an eye out for, and maybe it happens more often than I notice, because, it's not something I think about a lot.
That makes sense. So I think actually, counter to my original plan, because we're having some sound interference, I'm actually going to put on two of the other audio pieces that I wanted to play tonight, just to fit them in and also ease some of the distraction that's going on in the headphones.
All right, sounds good.
So we're going to do that for a sec. The next piece I'm going to play, there are actually two pieces by Ann Hirsch, who's normally our host here. They're called My Butt and Banana Pants, and they're from her Scandalicious project that she worked on several years ago, in which she took on this YouTube celebrity character called Caroline, and Caroline would dance to various songs and became this kind of like YouTube cam whore, but she also released an album, so we're going to listen to two very, very short songs from that album.
Think I'm gonna dance today, I feel pretty sexy. I look to my left, I look to my right, I wonder if he noticed me. Yeah, he's pretty sexy with that banana in his pants. Think he's gonna buy me a drink, but I'll probably say no.
So that was Ann Hirsch again with first Banana Pants and then My Butt. How do we feel about my butt? I feel like we had some laughs even though the mics weren't on.
I'm speechless.
You're very
You can't be
speechless
speechless the whole night. Come on.
It's not like you, Michelle.
What's there to say? No. That was hilarious. It makes me wish that Anne was here.
I know. Anne, she's
where
off
are
vacationing
you?
with her family, getting a tan, and probably drinking gin and tonics.
She probably has that butt out on the beach somewhere.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like, I don't know, I felt like I had to include that in the audio art episode when she wasn't here. All right, so now that we've gotten through 2 of our audio art pieces for the night, I figure before we get into my really tough questions, not really that tough. Sally, do you want to talk a little bit about what you do?
Sure. So in my professional life, I work for Creative Time, and my title is the Program Manager of Global Initiatives, which I always feel like I work for like the United Nations or something.
Sounds like it.
I know it does. But I work for a public arts organization. Specifically, the main project that I work on for Creative Time is our annual summit, which I am very much in the midst of right now. It's coming up on October 25th and 26th at NYU Skirball Center. So that keeps me very, very busy. And it's actually, it's been really great because this is the 3rd summit that I've worked on. So I've gotten to sort of see it grow, and I think that's one of the things that's most rewarding for me.
And make it grow,
nurture it, love it.
It has a sliding scale ticket.
Yes, it's pay
year,
what
right?
you choose
that's
this
so
year.
Awesome.
And I have to say that that's something that I was very I think was very important to me, was to make sure that it was accessible. And we've gotten
that was
great.
A big deal to me.
I don't encourage going for $10, but you can if you want to. And I do other projects as well. Right now, I also manage our global residency program, which is in kind of also a developmental phase. And so that's what I do professionally. But I also do curatorial side projects. I also make art from time to time. I have a background in sculpture, so I'd like to revisit it. I think when I started my master's in curatorial studies, I was discouraged from doing anything but curatorial work, and then it took me a while to sort of recover from that after grad school, and then I realized about 6 months into being in New York that it didn't really matter to me, that I just wanted to work on things that excited me and work with artists. So right now I'm working on, I'm co-curating with Christina Vassallo the fall exhibition at Flux Factory that Angie is in.
Woo.
And that opens on September 6th and runs through the 29th. So check it out. We'll be announcing it early or in a couple of days, so keep a lookout for it.
Wait, sorry, I wanted to ask a question.
Sure.
Did your curatorial program literally discourage you from art practice?
Yeah, I mean, it was actually one of the very first things that I was told, that it's, really impossible to maintain both practices. And at the time I actually totally went into this program. I don't want to say I was on a whim, but I was in a very different place than I am now. And, I'm convinced that the only reason I got into the program was that I was able to convince one of the professors that, curating was, that my experience, talking to people about wine and food, working in a restaurant, was pretty much the same as curatorial work somehow. And
wow.
I'm
that
really
sounds like a tough sell to me, but I believe that you could do it.
I'm not sure what I said. I had done worked on some projects, but my knowledge of the field was very, very limited at the time I was accepted to grad school. So, I took that, I took it sort of seriously, but also in the back of my mind, knew that, you can make your practice whatever you want it to be, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, that's awesome. I look forward to seeing more art. I look forward to seeing some of your art projects. You told me a little bit about a book project or a response to a book that you were working on, and it sounded really interesting. So.
Oh yeah, drawings. Working on some drawings.
Michelle, the floor is yours.
So I wanted to say that Sally's non-conventional approach to curating is what drew us together when we first when we first met.
At the Creative Time Summit, actually.
We met at the Creative Time Summit in
2009.
Crazy.
2009
Mm-hmm.
that was? 2009.
Damn.
Yep.
I forgot. I didn't mention that you two have like a previous relationship and that you work together and all that stuff. So some familiarity in the room.
So yeah. So I am my main role right now is that I am the director of the EFA Project Space, which is a exhibition and event venue, somewhat unconventional at times, other times more conventional. That's part of the Elizabeth Foundation for the Arts in Manhattan. It's on West 39th Street in Manhattan, and the Elizabeth Foundation for the Arts consists of several programs. One of them is a studio program that comprises up to, I think, 80 studios in the building, and the EFA Project Space, which is the program that I'm the director of, and the Robert Blackburn Printmaking Workshop. So through the EFA Project Space, we have a variety of different kinds of exhibitions, and most of the time it's in collaboration with other organizations, independent curators, with artists who have ideas about shows that sort of represent trends from within their community. And I see myself as I also curate as well in the program, but I see myself more as like a curator of the curators or something, more like a facilitator of the whole, think about the whole year as like a conversation that we're presenting about different important practices taking place in the arts community. And I am also an artist as well. Not an aside, also equally as important to me. I have my own artistic practice that is mostly performance-based, multimedia, performance lecture, but it's always changing, and it's about to change more, so I don't know where it's going to go.
I'm super excited that you two are both willing to come on today. I'm a huge admirer of both of you, as I hope you already know.
I'm a huge admirer of you, and
likewise.
Oh, you guys. So, oh boy, it sounds like we have the next door noises again.
Guest, our special,
our special
guest.
Other guest who's having a very loud conversation. But hopefully that'll get quieter. So I wanted to start with some questions. You both have these institutional roles, but you also have independent practices, and I was wondering, like, how do you like maintain that balance, and what are the pros and cons of having an institution attached to a lot of what you do? So, like, how do you manage to make your own work while working like 9 to 5 for an institution, and then what benefit and what are the drawbacks?
Well, I would say working for an institution that is a positive and supporting institution, there are a lot of benefits, and I work with many artists who work at institutions, and that's not always the case. But when you work for an institution that represents something that you believe in, it's actually, there are more benefits than drawbacks. The drawback is the time.
Right.
But the benefits are the opportunity to have exposure to many different people that you are interested in and inspired by. Also, the opportunity to provide opportunities for people that, that I, like for me, people I know in my own community, that I can provide opportunities through my institution. I have found, in many times, like I was the luckiest person because I'm basically, being paid to, in a way, I do happen to be about to be entering into graduate school, but for a number of years I felt like I was being paid, and also in my own form of graduate school, sort of
like experientially learning as you go.
Yeah. So the benefits are very, very high if you are matched up to the right organization that represents the same sort of sentiment that you believe in. And the only real drawback is just finding the time to do the things, because there's plenty of inspiration and community that comes with it that just actually leads to so many opportunities, and it's just finding the time to
do you ever feel like you aren't able to like achieve or do as much as you want to in your own practice because you have this like other commitment of probably
Yes, and I also feel like there are times if I'm on a roll with something I'm doing in my own practice, then then unfortunately that will affect. I hate to say this publicly, but if I'm preparing for a show or something, I'm aware that that's probably affecting my ability to work for my at my job. But the key is just to never let either side slip too far, and you always get caught up. It's like it's always a juggling act.
Do you feel like the audience that you gain because of your ability to gain a wider audience from working institutionally also benefits your audience in your art practice? Or is it like strictly separate, like work, art?
I used to feel that it was very separate. I used to think that my art practice was really outside of the art community. It was something that I was doing, and it was undefined, and I didn't know if it was art, and so it was very helpful for me to think of them as completely separate. But I'm not. But that's unrealistic. That's true. So I don't know. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like my coming to know you definitely involved like a crossover of your like institutional curator Michelle and also artist Michelle from like the very beginning.
Yeah, I mean, my life is basically like, am I going to this event because this is my friend's birthday party, or am I going to this event because this is related to my art practice, or is it like something for work? Everything. I think my whole life is all intertwined like that.
Yeah. How about you, Sally?
Well, I mean, I agree with Michelle in some ways. I think that her and I are both really fortunate because we work directly with artists. I think that there are some administrative roles that are, I mean,
development.
Right. And I also, I have to say, the development team at Creative Time, they're like completely amazing, and they totally absolutely love what they do. And so I feel very lucky to be in a place where most people really do love their jobs and are very, very good at it, and that's inspiring. Also because so many of my colleagues do maintain side projects, and whether or not they're art related, whether or not it's like, they're working on, like a food blog or whatever. But I think working directly with artists, and in my case, so many artists and, institutions, right now I'm we have 40 summit presenters lined up. I'm in conversations with 50 international screening sites all over the world. So, it's an opportunity to really meet some amazing people and make some really great contacts. So I'm, there's always like a steady source of inspiration and sort of like a kick in the ass because you are constantly, learning about these incredible people. For me, I've been trying to do like work on one side project at a time that feels more manageable to me, because I went through a period where I had, a few things, or maybe like 5 things I was like half-assed working on, and none of them were progressing. So that was one sort of rule that I've given myself. I'm working on a drawing project, but that's not very time sensitive. That's just something I work on when I have time. And I also I really like to collaborate, because I like to feel like I have responsibility to somebody else who I respect. And setting meetings, and just, even after a long day of work, just being like, what, we're gonna go do that studio visit because
you have a deadline.
We have it set up, and we have the deadline, and there's people there waiting for me. So that's something that I don't know. And I also really enjoy working with other people too. So that's sort of how I've managed to kind of fit it into my life, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
But if you're working on a project you're excited about, it's worth it.
Yeah.
And I would definitely be interested in doing more of my own sort of projects that I guess you could consider art projects, but we'll see.
Do you ever, as like 2 people who are working in pretty important positions in institutions that I feel like a lot of artists are very interested in being involved with or aligned with, do you ever feel like people treat you differently when you tell them like who you work for or where you're from, like even just like socially?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, and It was actually really useful when I started working at EFA, because I had a lot of arts exhibition experience, but not any clout.
Right.
And so it really helped in the beginning when I wanted to approach someone that I really wanted to work with that I didn't know at all, that was established in some way.
Institutional tie.
Yes, it was all of a sudden I could get over being so, like, why would they want to talk to me? Why would they want to work with me? Because I could just say, I'm working with this, the Elizabeth Foundation, and it already had a reputation, so so it really helped, especially in the beginning, with the ability to work with people that I was contacting cold, basically.
Yeah. I asked this question because, like, what little authority that I've had, like, curating Conflux has caused, like, a now nearly year-long chain of people just sort of proposing their projects to me for things that I'm like, I'm not curating anything, like, I'm not actually, but here, that sounds really interesting, like, here's a person, and in the beginning, I was always responding to all of them, but, like, after a while, it was just, like, some of them were just so, like, Burning Man related, or, like, just completely, like, I don't know. Do you feel like you get a lot of, like, unsolicited, like, you meet somebody and then you get some unsolicited stuff, and how do you, like, manage that?
Yeah, I get there's unsolicited stuff, but because we do have very particular types of exhibitions and projects that we look for, I think it's most people understand that in the end, if it's just not quite the right fit. I also have gotten unsolicited stuff that was, like, really the right fit, like people who really have been following our program and following our space and have something that really makes sense with it, and then it's really great. So it's tricky at first, of course, saying no to people, but I think, and that's what it is, being an artist and a curator and working in the arts, is proposing things, and they don't always work out.
Do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, I definitely agree with Michelle. Sometimes there are some people that are very persistent. I have a little bit of a buffer because I'm not the director or the chief curator. So I can, that being said, I feel that I have a certain level of trust in the organization. I've been there for a while, and if I feel strongly about a project and I feel like it fits into the summit, or also Creative Time Reports, those are some places that have a little bit more leeway. Obviously our larger commission projects, we do 2 gigantic projects a year, and they're planned out years and years and ahead. Like, there's not much room for us to
throw
Sally,
stuff in.
Why haven't you put me in one of those projects yet?
Yeah. Hey.
Michelle and Angie live at Grand Central Station.
Seriously, I want to see that next year.
I mean, I don't. So, anyways, I definitely do.
Yeah, let's just guilt you the whole show.
Damn
it! Creative Time is my favorite organization in New York.
I know you're the final decider.
I'm serious.
On everything.
But I will say that we just closed our deadline for the summit open call, and that was my one of my contributions to the summit. I really felt strongly that we had to open the floor.
It's great.
And
awesome.
we're doing it again, and it's hopefully there will be more opportunities. And anyways, so there are definitely opportunities to pitch things and have them work out through.
Yeah, that's great.
But at the same time, it's nice to have the buffer to say, I'll have to run it up the ladder and see what Mr. Thompson says.
That's so funny.
Well, Michelle doesn't have that, but she does have
you are the top
an
of the
advisory
ladder.
committee,
right?
Oh,
which I'm on,
which Sally is on.
Oh shit!
And will be more involved.
So you have
soon.
to speak to Michelle and then Sally, and that's pretty funny. I wanted to ask a little. This is Michelle specific, but Sally, as an awesome curator and an authority on Michelle's practice and life as well, feel free to jump in. Michelle, and correct me if I say anything like out of line, but Michelle has a really a performance practice that I really love, which involves these sort of like obsessions with odd individuals or ideas of individuals. One of whom is Agent Dale Cooper from Twin Peaks, and ooh, bless you. And Matthew Stromberg, who to me is just some guy who apparently lives in LA. Who's Matthew Stromberg? Why are you making so much work about him? And can you just talk about your practice in general about these sort of like obsessive performances?
Well, I'll start a little bit with the general. I definitely, I'm very interested in people, in particular characters, and I do have an obsessive side to me that when I was younger was very extreme. You might call me a stalker. But it was also because I was extremely shy, and I spent a lot of time observing people, and sort of trying to figure them out without actually interacting with them. And so this carries over from that. But I'm also just really interested in how we sort of try to, how everyone is looking for answers, and I feel like everyone projects onto other people. In search of like learning more about their own selves, or even looking for some form of salvation, even, and a lot of times those are pop cultural figures or fictional figures, or it could be somebody that is in their family, or someone that you observe from afar, but just an average ordinary person. So that always interested me, because that's sort of how I've lived my life, defined. I have all of these different categories for people. I mean, I'm not going to get into the deep level, but so I have selected in the past few years. I have these two different sort of ongoing, more prolonged, engaged explorations of these characters. But I actually have always been making work about individual people, and have many other smaller little obsessions going on. But so Matthew Stromberg is a guy. He's just a guy, and I know him. This is something I don't always fully disclose, but I definitely I have no problem saying I know Matt. I've known him for a long time now. We went to the same college. We didn't know each other that well in college, but there was this period of time where we were both living in San Francisco, and we ended up living in the same apartment. Said this is some information that I don't always get into the details, just because there are a lot of details. But that was when I started making work about him, and that was about 15 years ago. So
wait, while you were living with him.
Yes,
in the same space, you were already making work about him, and he was aware of it, or no?
Yes, it was. It was in the beginning. It was not welcome in the way that it is now.
He's not an artist, is he? He's a musician.
He is a musician. Okay. I believe there was a time he did make art. He is also an arts enthusiast, or I don't want to insult Matt if you're listening. I don't want to insult you or say the wrong thing. But he was an art historian. He works in the art world. He writes a lot about art. So he, in that way, he's accepted this whole phenomenon because he understands it in the context of art history or whatever. Yeah. But I became fixated on him, and I think it's hard to explain. It's not a romantic fixation. People always think it's romantic, but it's really, there's just something so there's something just so human about him. Like he had a lot of contradiction at the time when I was living in the same house with him too. We were just out of college. Everyone was like depressed and repressed and going through a lot of stuff, and Matt and I went through a period where we really didn't get along at all, and that was when I started making the work about him, because even when we were just not able to get along, I related to him, or I saw something in him. And anyway, I don't know, I can't explain it. It's just there's this something about him, and I'm not the only person. Everybody that knows him would say the same thing. There's just something about this guy. There's just something about this guy. And so for years I made all of these different portraits of him, and then he started floating, and he started becoming more ethereal, and he started also blending with this other figure that I became somewhat fixated, which was is a actual guru. His name is Meher Baba. He was believed to be the embodiment of God. He was an Indian figure. Had thousands upon thousands of followers, and there was something about the depictions of him that just tickled me on the inside, and there was like a connection between him and Matt. And so basically there was this time where I was very seriously injured, and I was unable to walk, and I was in the care of my mother, and I was very depressed, and I knew I would be able to walk again, but I never knew if I would be able to walk completely, as I had before. And at that time, I'm not going to say, I say that I had this vision of him. I don't know that it appeared exactly as a vision, but it definitely was a notion in my head of this sort of conglomeration of Matthew Stromberg and Meher Baba together, and he was this floating head surrounded by fruits and flowers. And so I made this painting of him in my lap. This is all real. People always think that what I'm saying is made up. It's true. I really saw it. I really painted it. And I spent, weeks and weeks painting it and showing it to my mother, and my mother being like,
"What is this? Who's this guy?
I don't get it.
Yeah.
And then I just was like obsessed with him. Like, this is the best artwork I've ever made. So anyway, then that was like years ago, and I kept sort of revisiting that image, and then I went through another really hard time, and at that time I created a digital version of it that I was then I was printing and passing around. This was also years ago, and it's only in the past few years that I created this sort of multimedia live performative experience that's
Which
like the
is
full-on religious. I trying to start a religion based on basically the feeling that I get from the thought of the floating head of Matthew Stromberg, cornucopia Stromberg, surrounded by the miscellaneous wreath of moving living things. I want to try to share that feeling of giddiness that it makes me feel with other people. So on the one hand, it's very goofy. On the other hand, there's something sincerely that I'm trying to share. It's not he has this specific message. It's different for everybody, but
I also think when you do the live performance, because I've seen it a couple times, you definitely, when you're describing it, I feel like there's a lot of room to ask questions about, whether or not it's disingenuous, but I feel like when you're there and you really feel the sincerity of your experience with this vision, and also especially with testimonials and other sort of you bring in a lot of reality to along with this beautiful animation and the soundtrack that you've had made for it.
I think the testimonials were really significant for me as someone who's, I'll never forget, right after I met Michelle and she told me her website, and I looked at the first thing I came across was Cornucopia Stromberg, and shortly thereafter I was presented with my own cornucopias, and to this day there's one on my refrigerator and also one in my bedroom. So he is with me, and I think I always sort of regarded him as sort of a deity, but I think in the live performance, the element of mysticism and kind of almost cultish religious fanaticalness. That's not a word, but
fanaticism.
Yeah. Yes. I think it kind of reaches a whole new level, but then at the same time there are these testimonials that ground it and kind of take you back to seeing the more intimate and almost vulnerable personal sides of Stromberg, which I feel was an interesting choice for you, almost risky, but I feel it was successful. Because you could have just gone the...
Yeah, I'll just say the testimonials, I actually interviewed people through Skype that are close to him. So, which, I don't know if there's time to talk more about this, but the interesting thing to me about that was that there was this one time I did the presentation in LA, and Matt Stromberg was there, and he knew that I had interviewed people, but he didn't realize that I was using them in the performance.
Oh, wow.
And I think it had a really powerful effect on him to see people that he knew actually speaking about him.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit I don't know, I feel when I've had a few instances where somebody has given me a copy of the recommendation letter that they've sent out for me, and I just end up crying because it's just such a weird experience to read
totally.
in print or in like physical, like the kind of appreciation that somebody else has for you.
I keep a copy. There's my undergraduate professor, sculpture professor, who's I definitely changed my life. I mean, I went in as an illustration major, hated every second of it, and he basically forced me to change my major to sculpture. He like pretty much said I have no choice, and and he wrote, I keep his recommendation letter like on my desktop, just
That's
for those moments of self-doubt.
I have a few of those too. Did you want to talk a little bit about Agent Dale Cooper?
It's changed so much through the years, like the role that he plays. I think it just started. This is a character that I was attached to for a long time, and what I tell people is like, something happens. So, for people who haven't watched Twin Peaks, which there are many, and I'm always very excited when I come across people who haven't watched Twin Peaks, because to me this is about something more than Twin Peaks. But so something happens to him all the way at the end of the season, like all the way at the end of the series, like in the last moment. And I had grown up with Twin Peaks, and I had watched it many, 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 many times. I had never seen the end until much later in life. So this was so Dale Cooper, who's this very unusual, special, intelligent, mystical, telepathic, sort of very in touch with his emotional feminine side, yet masculine. It's sort of like, he appreciates all these small things in life. He's just he's like a Buddha, a modern day Buddha, and thousands upon thousands of people are very attached to this character. And I just spent so much time with him in my life, watching Twin Peaks over and over again, but I never got to the end. So by the time I saw the end and what happened to him, I had been living with this character for so long, he was real.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is I had just been broken up with my boyfriend, who bought me the box set, and I was watching it on my own, going through a breakup. So it's like, these things happen to you, like psychologically. Yeah. You project onto, it was such an extreme moment of projecting onto a character and feeling so distraught. Like, not only this is over, but like it's 20 years later, and Kyle MacLachlan is like, a middle-aged man. Like, there's no going back. There's no fixing this. So I actually, and then I thought about it for years without doing a project, and the reason I was able to finally do the project is I really want to be careful about like taking too much from Twin Peaks and the feeling of Twin Peaks
pop
and the
culture part of it. Yeah,
but then I realized like there were other things I was working through, and at the time when I started the project, it was very much also just dealing with these ideas, like it personally in my life, of someone who you lose in some way, and or goes to the dark side. I was actually going through a very difficult time with someone close in my family, and it actually it was my way. That was my. I was thinking very much about how you can use something fictional that everyone can sort of relate to think about.
As a
sort
parallel
of parallels to things that we all kind of deal with. So that's how it started, and it really just took on its own life, and it continues to have its own life, and I could like tell the whole story of it, but it would take the rest of this time.
It's a really great project.
Thank you.
Happy to have been
That's
engaged
how I
with
met
it
you.
for so long. I know. You sent me a proposal about it to a project that I curated. All right. Changing gears. This is kind of a question back in the vein of working with institutions or the authority of a curator or being in charge. But, like, what's it like being a woman in charge? And do you ever feel like you emasculate, like, men that work under you because you're a woman in charge? Like,
I don't know how much I don't associate or think of myself as a woman in charge. And to be honest,
you are a woman and you are in charge.
We did talk about this earlier, though, because you talked about actually that the authority of being labeled the head curator or the curator doesn't seem to matter very much to you.
It doesn't, and I mean we did talk about this a bit, and it's working at an institution where there is a chief curator who has a very large personality, very well known
celebrity.
He's a celebrity curator, and he's amazing. There's a lot to be learned from him, and I'm really grateful to to be able to work really closely with him and to brainstorm ideas. It's one of the most exciting parts of my job, and it's I guess it's not. I think that I think working in an institution, anyone that's not the curator does do a lot of curatorial work. There's other people at my organization that have similar situations, and I think to me it's not important. I don't need to be necessarily labeled a curator with a capital C. I just want to feel like I'm working on projects that excite me and that I do have a voice. I think if I didn't have a voice in the project, when I feel like my voice is being shut down or not taken seriously, I tend to get really frustrated very quickly. And I feel lucky in that that's not something that I encounter very often, even working with someone who's, a celebrity curator. That's not something that I experience very often at work, which I'm very grateful for. I could see that being an issue in other situations. But in terms of, I work with a lot of women, and I do. I have.
But you work under a guy.
I do. Yeah.
What is that?
But I work under a guy. But I also the head, our president and artistic director is a woman. And I think that
a powerful woman,
a very very powerful woman. Awesome. That and that's amazing too. And I think that. That's another thing that's really exceptional about my organization is that the kind of Ann Pasternak, Katie Hollander, the deputy director, my boss, my immediate boss, the director of global initiatives, Laura Rajkovic, they're all women and they all have children. And I think that's really unique. And there's one of my colleagues is pregnant right now, and it's a completely accepted thing for that to happen. So I think that's another thing that's really unique. So even though our chief curator and one of our biggest personalities is a male, I think it is a very female-friendly organization.
That's really nice to hear because, especially Creative Time, you're sort of at the intersection of social justice and art making. So it's I guess it's nice to hear that the institution kind of practices what it preaches in a way, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's something we're internally constantly checking ourselves. And I think actually NATO is really, he definitely keeps us on track in terms of, kind of checking our morals and kind of questioning why we're making certain decisions. And so I think, that's a little off track from what you were asking.
I don't think so.
But,
That's awesome, though.
It is. But in terms of feeling what was the question?
I don't know, just as when you're a female authority figure dealing with men who may be under your artist that you're working with as a curator, do you ever feel like you're in a position emasculating men?
No, it's not.
We are a feminist podcast.
Yeah.
I gotta get these in here, guys.
It's not something I come across very often, but sometimes part of my job, which is interesting because I'm actually relatively nervous public speaker, but part of my job is to have one-on-one conversations with presenters and talk to them about what makes a great 8-minute presentation. And I have a call next week or later this week with Vito Acconci, and I'm going to be telling him how he should be delivering his presentation. And there's moments like that I have where I'm talking to a male sort of icon,
super likely
famous artist,
charismatic,
and I'm going to be telling him what deadlines he has to follow, and giving him like a lesson on not a
public
lesson,
speaking.
but I mean, I definitely have a lot of moments like that, and I don't feel like I'm demasculating them in any way, but I think it's kind of funny and also a really kind of amazing learning experience for me.
Nice.
So that's my answer.
What about you, Michelle? You're a director. There's lots of people who want to collaborate or work at EFA or in the project space, and you're also very attractive.
Thank you. Well, actually...
So, Angie, wait, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I missed that part about saying that Sally is also very good looking.
I'm just joking.
Well, speaking to that, actually, I mean, I'm not sure how to answer the whole, like, whether or not I feel like that I'm in situations where someone's being emasculated, but I do feel that there are these situations of that flirtation that comes about, when we're in a professional
contact
situation, and when I started working at EFA, I really didn't know what to do with it. It like terrified me, and then there have been other times where I felt like, well, this is something that I just have to kind of play along with and sort of.
So you have to deal with men flirting with you and just kind of like...
Yeah, there's...
It's part of the job?
Well...
No. Sorry.
No, I guess I'm not saying that at all. Gosh, no. But I think it's more that it was something that terrified me at first, and I felt like I didn't know what to do, and I wanted to just be very neutral and pretend like it wasn't happening, whereas there's a way to take advantage of the situation, where it's like, it's more just thinking, I mean, I think I'm always thinking about this role of like, I'm a woman and this is a man, and we're working together, and there's this dynamic, and there's always going to be this dynamic of a woman and a man working together, and rather than like run away and try and be like, no, I'm just a little pre-adolescent 15-year-old, which I'm clearly not, to try to figure out, okay, this dynamic exists, so just acknowledge it in a way and sort of be playful about it instead of, in saying that, I have to say a lot of times I really feel like, to the extent where my like social life is hindered, like I really am very professional, and I will not, like, I'm not like going around like like showing my leg.
No, I didn't mean to insinuate that at all, because I think you do a really great job of
it is very hard to the extent where sometimes my social life is hindered, where I will not I will not go along with so-and-so's come-ons or whatever, because like they're an artist doing something with me. But it's tricky, and it's just this question of men and women working together and the dynamic that always exists, and I don't know.
And it's a slightly different dynamic than, it's pretty, many people do not follow this rule, but it's pretty black and white of a rule that, like, you do not date your coworkers.
Yeah,
however,
I fucked that up so many times.
I mean, who hasn't?
Yeah.
But I think when you're working with like this, constant rotating door of artists, it becomes a little more mushy. Because they're people that you have a professional relationship with, but
not maybe on a long-term basis.
I do have to I have to say, the thing that I have observed is that actually most male artists that I work with do not flirt with me. They do not try to ask me out, and it's really only the ones like in positions of power that might feel that
entitled
are successful in some way, or not successful in some way, but relatively successful. That like step over that. And so it is a strange dynamic.
I think that's like,
and it's never worked out for anybody.
when I first moved to New York, I was like meeting all of these people who run different all these men who run different organizations, and like suddenly they're like, I'm like relatively new, have like no credibility at all, and suddenly I'm being offered like opportunities to collaborate with these institutions, and I was like, oh sweet, they must have looked me up and I must be doing a great job. And they're like, yeah, let's like meet up and talk about it. And then like you meet up for drinks and you never talk about it, and then like there's like, oh, we didn't talk about it, we have to meet up again. And then it's kind of like, oh, and these people are like much like inappropriately older, and like I was just sort of like, wow, this is okay, this is just something that like women in New York in the art world probably must like always have to kind of like deal with, or just kind of, I guess I have learned to, like, because my response was really poor. Like, I was just like, ooh, opportunity, of course I'm gonna come again, I'm just gonna keep coming back. Oh, like, there's nothing happening. Oh, like, kind of the description that you had, this kind of like, oh, I'm like an adolescent child, like, I don't know, what do I do? I'm just gonna pretend that's not happening.
But the thing that I think about a lot, because I think about this a lot, because these situations come up a lot, is not to be like, oh, these situations come up a lot, but whatever, they come up.
Yeah, they come up.
And I'm very enthusiastic when I think someone's doing some great work.
Yeah.
And then if I'm inviting them to work with us on something, or talking to them about, or just giving them the attention because I am really interested in what they do, and they happen to be male, I don't think about that dynamic, but then when they're like, I would love to work with you, but not in that way, you know, I'm like, okay, well, I guess maybe I can see it from their angle, or I try to sometimes be like, if a very attractive man was telling me that I was so talented and, you know, wanting to support me in everything I was doing, I mean, maybe I would, I don't know, you know, if the tables were turned, but it just doesn't happen that often.
I made the biggest blunder ever, because I was like, this artist and comedian, I really like admired what he did, and like he was he was so interested in working with me that I was like sure that he must be like romantically interested, like, because I was like so used to that happening, and I was like totally welcomed through it, and then he was just like, no. I was just like, it's terrible.
You know, that's not terrible, because I don't know, I just feel like I have become pretty cynical, and that if somebody that I really admire that happens to be a man that I really wanted to work with, and they are not gay, they're heterosexual, and they really want to work with me because they want to work with me, that would be really awesome. I feel like there's so much gray area and weird dynamics that come up, and I don't want to, you know, there are plenty. Now I feel like I'm being like, I'm probably just like focusing on a few specific instances, because there are plenty of wonderful men, talented and thoughtful and kind men that I have worked with that I do not feel like had ulterior motives.
I mean, it's an interesting dynamic in many ways, but I think, you know, like, you get art crushes on people, and I think that some of the behaviors and you know, are very similar to a real crush, and so it's really hard
to. Absolutely true, and I think it goes both ways, male, female. It's not like this is the plight of the women.
But working. I think it is, though. I think there's a stereotype, but I think there's some truth to it, of men in positions of power who abuse that position of power to women who are either less experienced or like younger, or like you know, I think there's a lot more of that than like older women, experienced arts administrators who are like preying on young.
I do aspire to be that at some point, though.
You totally could if you wanted to.
I haven't figured out. I haven't honed it yet, but
yeah, you haven't gotten into your like, you haven't put your sleaze.
You gotta do it, and then you have to write a tell-all book about it.
Oh yeah, or get a reality TV show about it. All right. Well, now that we got into that, I guess, so I was also wondering, like, I don't know, on a lot of the episodes of the podcast, we've talked about, like, representation of women in the writing world, how many women are being published, and also, like, exhibitions. Is this something that you like think about when you're curating shows? Like, do I have enough women in the show? Are there women in the show? And are a lot of your shows male heavy?
I actually do. It's something that I pay attention to, but usually not as
like a construct or something.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that it's something that after you have like the ideal sort of group together, then you look at and then you say like, oh, you know, wow, this is more men or more women. I think that usually it just sort of works itself out, and I think that, you know, something...
Do you mean for you or in general?
For me, personally.
Yeah.
I think that one of the kind of amazing things... I've been in New York now for 4 years since I finished grad school. Like, in August, a few days ago, it was 4 years. And I think that in the last 4 years, I've met so many exceptional women, and it's something that I've, like, really noticed in New York. Like, all of a sudden I came here, and, like... You know, I was almost making friends and really interesting female creative friends at like a faster rate than I ever had in my whole life. So when I'm working on a project, I think that they're one of the kind of pools of people in my life that I reach out to first. So I think because of that, it hasn't been an issue. And I think in terms of working on the summit, it's something that we take really seriously, and we look at every section, and we, you know, talk about, you know, gender, you know, different perspectives, ethnicity, all those things are things that are like very, very intentional, and that's something that we think about along the way, where it's like one person says no, or that they, you know, they can't make it for some reason, and then you have to replace them, and you need to keep that sort of balance. So I mean, it's but I do think it's a problem. It's not, I mean, in terms of something that I have to think about too much. I feel like it just sort of happens naturally in my own projects that there's a good balance.
But do you, like, outside of your practice and creative time, would you, I mean, I feel like a lot of gallery rosters are male heavy, particularly in Chelsea, and do you feel like that it's true? Yeah, I do. I mean, and I'm not, you know, I think it's a long, complicated history, and I do. I mean, I definitely think it's a problem, and it's something that I've noticed, and I think very significantly also in like museum collections. Yeah. And I think that, you know, that's sort of the root in a sense, because, you know, people, you know, commercial galleries, collectors, people that work in acquisitions and museums see that as like maybe a better investment to invest in a male artist, and that's not cool. That's shitty to say it in simple terms. Yeah. But where are you in this, Michelle?
Okay. Well, I definitely think about it a lot. I feel pretty optimistic about the state of female artists, at least in New York City. When I started working at EFA and I started curating, the first major curatorial project I did was very like process focused and conceptual, and I felt like you know, I was developing this whole show by meeting with one artist and having them suggest another artist, and it was so fascinating. And I had developed this list of artists they were very much working with experimentation with technology and all these things. And I looked, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, this is all men. And that was the first time I was faced with this situation. And I was like, oh my God. And then I have to actually specifically say, oh, but can you recommend a woman that you know working in this way? And then I ran into this problem that was a real lesson for me, where I was recommended a quite established artist, female artist, and I sent her an email saying, you know, this is what the show is about. This is what I'm looking for. Somehow, it's like all dudes. We need some ladies. You know, I didn't say it but it was pretty casual, because that's how I had been more contacting people that I had some connection with. And she wrote me back this very offended email, just being like, at this point in my life, you know, I'm not here to fill a quota. Can you know, like I only want to participate in a show for my work and not because I'm a woman. And I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe, you know, and it really had such a strong impact. I mean, I think I spent like a day writing her an email back, like tears pouring down my face. Man. And from that point on, I mean, it was such a lesson to me to just thinking about like this, like, okay, we only have men, now we have to fill it with women. And but really what it wasn't that, oh, there are more men doing these interesting processes, but it's more like how men promote themselves, or how like there's this boys club,
the packaging,
and then as soon as like I started to realize like, okay, it takes like looking in different places and thinking differently to find the women that are working in the ways that relate to this theme or to this process. All of a sudden, you know, at some point it all opened up, and I think part of it is just like the longer you're in the community here and you're really around and you get to know people, like what Sally said. I personally, and once I was so aware of that, like, wow, my own tendency is to choose an exhibition of all men. Like, what is going on with me? You know, so I became really aware of it from that point, and also really sensitive to it, and also aware, like, throughout that, from that point until now, that there's, like, a sea of, like, brilliant, just amazing, just, like, fierce women in New York that like, are just doing incredible things.
But I think it's really important to you know, you have to build those personal relationships. Because I find that men, in, you know, again, this could be a generalization, but I've noticed that, you know, male artists and, you know, different men I've worked with in the workplace, they're maybe more comfortable promoting themselves, and they're definitely like, if they get into a big exhibition or they get an award or they have some other accomplishment, like they are going to let you know. You will get an email from them. You will see it on Facebook, and I think that's something that men do, maybe in general.
In general,
and I think
generalize,
that the women who do that, and myself, I'm included in that because I'm a big self-promoter, but I end up feeling extremely guilty, and I feel like a little bit of like, you're an attention whore. Like, I feel like a lot of the women that I know who are like really like big self-promoters, or self-promoter is like an ugly marketing word for it, but like are good at sort of like communicating what they're doing to a mass audience. Like, I feel like there's still like a weird internal guilt thing for a lot of the women I know who do that, myself included, and also like just kind of an icky response to it in a way that it's like,
I think it's awesome.
I think it's changing, and I think that social media is definitely, like, especially in the last couple of years, like women catching up in social media and technology and like being like really proactive in those spheres, and also supported by other like-minded women.
Yeah, I mean, because the thing is, there's no doubt that there are just as many, if not more, women doing really important work in the U.S., in New York, and I do think it has to just do with this salience of some, you know. Like, once you're plugged into it and you see what's happening, it's just, at this point, I don't see like, oh, it's male dominated, or you know, like, it just, because I'm so aware of the women that are doing amazing work. But if you're not plugged in and you're not participating in the community, I don't know what it looks like from the outside, and I actually don't pay as much attention to what's going on in the commercial gallery world. You know, I try and stay outside of the market as much as possible. But I still feel like even there in the galleries that I go to see, like, I just see tons of women, and I think there's tons of respect for women, and I just think that there's a different approach to self-promotion. I mean, I think that's a huge part of it.
I think so too. All right, so we are actually kind of running out of time, so I wanted to get in our last two audio art pieces. The first piece I'm going to play is Nathaniel Sullivan's What Else Would Two Guys in Their Mid to Late 30s Talk About on a Tuesday Night? And then it's going to be followed by Jennifer Chan's piece, Total Release, a piece that was banned by SoundCloud and is quite explicit, just to get you ready for that. But we'll start with Nathaniel's and then move into Jennifer's.
I have always believed that there is more than one true love for a person. I also believe that lust is a more natural part of us than love, and that one can spend every waking moment falling in and out of lust. There are a few of us who are lucky enough to be in a position to fulfill our lustful desires. I'm one of those lucky ones. So don't be shocked to hear that if I had to count my sexual encounters, I would be closing in on 20,000 women. Yes, that's correct. 20,000 different ladies. At my age, that equals out to having sex with 1.2 women a day, every day since I was 15 years old. That quote is from A View from Above, an autobiography by basketball legend Wilt Chamberlain, the same Wilt Chamberlain that scored 100 points in a single game. I have wondered about those two numbers since I read the book when I was 12 years old. 100, 20,000. In 2011, I started doing a lecture performance that took a closer look at the two numbers and whether stats were the best way to understand the man and the mythology behind them. In 2013, I decided to perform the piece one last time. I would auction it off to be performed for one person at a Brooklyn Nets game. David Strauss was the winning bidder, and he was interviewed by Ann Hirsch a few days after the game.
My name is David Strauss. I'm the Director of External Affairs at the Queens Museum of Art. This was a pretty interesting way to start off the event, right? So he says, I'll be at the top of the subway steps, under the giant screen at the Barclays Center. And of course, before 18,000 people descend on an arena, there are a lot of people at the top of the steps. So, it's kind of just happenstance that I walked right up to him. And, it started off with us going into the game and Nathaniel having tickets for a game that was in December. So we didn't even get in instantly. And then as it turned out, so I was like, is this part of the performance or has he just brought the wrong tickets? And then as it turned out, we just somehow walked right past the admissions folks, went up to our seats, and sat down to watch the game. And he had some props with him, I guess a little bound book of charts and some photographs, the Wilt Chamberlain book. And as the game progressed, during timeouts, in between plays, even during the play, we slowly went through the sociological and statistical angles of Wilt Chamberlain's life, whether it's the 100-point basketball game or the 20,000 women and everything in between, and to figure out the feasibility of that and to really wrap your head around the largesse of both of those quote-unquote accomplishments. What else would two guys in their mid to late 30s talk about on a Tuesday night? So it begins with, the idea that he slept with 20,000 women. Wilt, not Nathaniel. And Wilt Chamberlain's assertion of this, and so you've got just that, and what that really translates into. So, you figure through the Kinsey report, it was presented to me that at that time, foreplay was 10 minutes on average in the country, something like that, and intercourse was 5 minutes. So what does 15 minutes times 20,000 look like? And that, translates into years worth of fucking, right? And how could he have done that? And then when you really put that along with his, remarkable season, in that 100-point year was just one game, but he averaged more than 48 minutes a game. And between the basketball time and the sex, he lived more than a year. And that then led to, understanding how he could have possibly done that, sleeping with multiple women at one time. And then, of course, Nathaniel takes out a photograph of Wilt's home in the Hollywood Hills, I think, and then what his bedroom looked like. And his bedroom was essentially just a giant mattressed room, huge. So you could imagine, you have to imagine that there were a lot of women rolling around in that room at one time in order to keep this average going, So then Nathaniel went from just the straight statistical into stuff that's a little more brass tacks about it. So the average ejaculation is, however many milliliters, you multiply that by 20,000 and you wind up with 13.6 gallons of semen, right? And that's an image that I think was more than I needed to really imagine about Wilt Chamberlain. And Nathaniel's like, there's, probably about 18,000, 19,000 people here, and that's about how many people Wilt Chamberlain slept with. And then when you look around, and it was kind of like an isolating feeling to think, like, it's really me and Nathaniel sitting in an arena full of women that Wilt Chamberlain slept with. It transforms people into numbers, which is kind of a sad thing to think about, And, it kind of made me think about actually what each of the women took out of these experiences versus what Wilt took out of the experiences. I mean, this is their one time to sleep with Wilt Chamberlain, and this is his 19,322nd woman that he slept with. To think about, breaking everything down into like 15-minute increments was kind of a unique way to look at things. That certainly is the language of sports now. Everything is statistically overanalyzed. The layers of research that went into Nathaniel's presentation about this was really something else. It didn't seem unnatural. It seemed like you could see Nathaniel as a little kid growing up in Vancouver playing basketball, and this was really a passion of his. Basketball is still a passion of his, but the fact that he was talking about Wilt Chamberlain like he was a fan, but to see pie charts and bar graphs all dissecting these various elements, either of the basketball game or his basketball season that year, or of these sexual conquests. The multi-layered aspect of it was really cool. I mean, every time you thought you were at a dead end statistically, Nathaniel would open another page and there would be another level underneath it. So it was really like peeling back layers of the onion until you got to the core.
How do you think him doing the performance at the game either added or interfered with the performance?
So Nathaniel had mentioned to me that this was not the first time that he'd done this performance, but certainly it was I think he said it was the first time that he'd done it one-on-one, and certainly the first time he'd done it in the setting of a professional basketball game. And I think that's really the only way to immerse yourself into Wilt Chamberlain's world. And if you're going to be discussing him, that's what it's about. You've got 19,000 people that are paying to get in and watch 10 guys run around and play basketball. And that, I think, feeds into this, the lust that must have followed Wilt everywhere he went. It was a lot more intimate than it would have been had we been somewhere else. Just because in that setting where you're sitting literally on top of somebody, going into it, it's even a little unnerving to think about the fact that you're going to spend 2.5 hours sitting next to somebody you've never met before, and that could have been awkward. Luckily, Nathaniel's got that really easygoing Canadian warmth thing. The idea that you're at the basketball game, we did you'd be in the middle of running through some charts, and then all of a sudden oh my God, look what just happened, what a great pass, and that, I think, added to the flow of it. It almost became both the primary and secondary focus. The game interchanged with the performance. I certainly left there thinking that I'd like to go to a basketball game with this guy or hang out with him again. The performance and the artist became one through that, and I think the performance, the artist, and the participant all became one through that experience. And it's something that I didn't expect, and I could see that with him being this kind of warm, open, absent-minded at times guy, that he's going to be able to forge ahead towards his latent goal of sleeping with 20,000 women himself.
Okay, so that was Nathaniel Sullivan's What Else Would Two Guys in Their Mid to Late 30s Talk About on a Tuesday Night. I wanted to say that I really like the idea of having a performance for one person, and I think that it's an interesting challenge to figure out how to document that without it being an invasion of that intimacy. And I thought that the near documentary style audio format was actually a really interesting way to approach that.
I would agree. At first, I thought Nathaniel was talking about himself. So.
Oh, as the person who'd slept with 20,000 women. Oh, that's really interesting.
So, that was interesting
because you know him
for me
personally, and
yeah,
maybe a little history there.
Yeah, we might have a little history. So but I knew that wasn't really true. But it was just
the way it was framed.
The way
in the
that
beginning.
was framed.
All right. Well, on that note, we're going to move on to the last piece, which is very short and radically different from that one. Jennifer Chan's Total Release. Again, this piece was banned by SoundCloud. So
not safe for work.
Not safe for work.
Or for my mother, Mom, stop listening now.
Yeah. So here we go.
Total Release presents www.totalrelease.org. This is a 3-minute preview clip of the kind of content that you can access at http://www.totalrelease.org. This website promises natural erotic self-hypnosis, minimal effort, maximal results. What if I told you that you could experience orgasm after orgasm for hours on end without having sex? No cost, no pills, no protection, no foreplay, no surgery, no devices. Hands-free, simple and natural method that they will offer you. You can download a free report. Take a few seconds and sign up to receive a free report and tons of tips on your sexual performance. That's a $15 value for free if you give us your name and email address. Okay, we're about to start the clip. There is a young woman on a leather couch. Her chest is heaving, and she's not touching herself. Her hands are gripping the leather couch. She's shivering. It's a tastefully decorated house with a kind of apple green wall covering, dark wood furniture. The woman is wearing a kind of corset, and sometimes when she's convulsing you can see some kind of tattoo on her abdomen. They're zooming in on her face and heaving chest now. Now that I look closer, it seems as though she has a lip ring.
Very powerful.
And now there's this off-screen male talking to the on-screen female about her experiences having the orgasm. The camera is focused on her. Her eyes are closed and her head is leaned back against the leather couch, and she is rubbing her fingers along her thighs in a nervous fashion. This has been a presentation of Total Release for www.totalrelease.org.
So that was Jennifer Chan, Total Release. Responses?
Just a question. Is that intended to be an audio piece, or is there normally a video accompanying?
No, that was intended for an audio piece exclusively.
It sounded like kind of disingenuous to me, not, the actual pornographic sounds. It sounded very much like it was a performance.
When you say performance, what do you mean by that?
It sounded like she was faking it.
Okay. Yeah.
Who was faking it? The person
the orgasming woman, yes.
I think that was it's supposed to be a marketing sort of experience, marketing the self-hypnosis soundtrack or video.
Yeah, I was wondering if the person orgasming, that was found footage or that was created specifically for this. Is she actually taking sourcing existing pornography, or is this something that was created?
That actually exists.
Yeah.
It's sort of interesting. It's are we really to the point where we're looking for just an easy way to get off without actually having to?
Yes.
We are.
No, I think
You mean as a society?
A society.
You know, it's like no work involved, nothing.
Well, everybody's so busy,
Right.
To be able to access that, and
Yeah, I want to clarify. When I said yes, I didn't mean me. I just meant
in general, yeah, because we're so mediated by technology and other.
well, you want a quick answer to everything.
Yeah.
A quick solution for everything. And that's something that I think about too. With my work, just like the search for answers on the internet.
Yes, and now we have phones to do it, like immediate sort of like responses to it, and true that. All right, well that was our audio art pieces. Thanks so much, you being authority figures, curators, arts administrators.
Definitely needed
listening
some
to
authorities.
Definitely wanted to talk to the experts. Well, Michelle and Sally, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Do you have, each of you, maybe start with Michelle, do you have anything coming up that you want to talk about? And also, you want to list your website so people can look up your work?
Okay, I will list my website first. It's www.michelle-levy.com. I'm about to release in the next few days a new version of cornucopiastromberg.com, which is a website specifically dedicated to the experience of Cornucopia Stromberg. Nice. But you can access that too through Michelle-Levy. I'm also working on something that I hope to have done in the next few weeks. It's a YouTube tutorial on determining whether you or your loved one has Agent Cooper in you.
Oh, nice. That sounds great.
Will be happening. And I think that's all for my art practice. There's a lot coming up with EFA as well. EFANYC.org. Look up EFA Project Space, and we have some events coming up in the near future.
Nice. Sally, how about you?
Sure. Well, on as I had mentioned before, on the show at Flux Factory, it's called Untitled As of Yet. That Angie is part of the roster. That will be opening September 6th, and we'll be, if you're not already on the Flux Factory mailing list, get on it now, because we're going to be sending out that announcement in the next few days. And there are some performances happening. Also mark your calendars for September 12th.
September 12th, we have a very exciting opening at EFA.
So Michelle and I are duking it out.
Last year at Marienbad Redux, curated by Bureau for Open Culture. It's going to be amazing.
I did get that mailer, and it did look amazing.
It's going to be amazing.
I do have to say that it is entirely possible to go to EFA and then come to Flux Thursdays following EFA, seeing as it starts slightly later. So you can, you can pack your evenings with both EFA Project Space and Flux Factory. September 12th. If you haven't gotten your Pay What You Choose tickets for the summit, get them quick. They are selling real fast. creativetime.org/summit. Get your tickets. Do it now. Nice. It's going to be great. Thanks, everyone.
And I want to say just quickly, and I'm sorry, I know that we're running out of time, and I know that Angela does not like it so much when people say too many positive things about her.
Oh, come on.
But So I've been listening to the podcast, and they're all focused on other people, but I just want to spend a minute focusing on Angela Washko, because she is
I'm gonna edit this out.
Okay. Don't you dare edit this out. She's leaving New York soon, in a few weeks, to go to graduate school. And great, just as I start speaking, we get the interference.
That's okay. It's a sign.
But speaking of kick-ass, amazing women doing awesome things in New York, I'm just going to say directly to you. When I say you, I'm talking to Angela. Okay. Since you moved here and you started doing your thing, right away I was just like, oh my God. It's I'm trying to have this tender moment.
Really crazy.
Hold on one moment. Hold that thought. Since Angela Washko arrived in New York, I made this note to myself, that person is going to do some amazing things.
I made the same note.
And I have to say, not only have you done so many amazing things here for the local New York art community, but so many amazing things personally for me, as well as many other artists that I know. It's been like an amazing blessing to New York City to have you here, and I'm excited and terrified to think about what you can do when you go off to school and you're focused only on your work. But the amount that you're able to accomplish here in New York, when there are many things that have to be done, including hustling to just survive, the amount that you're able to do here, just thinking about how much you're going to do when you're like in a concentrated environment. I'm really excited to see what becomes of Miss Washko, and I know it will be something great. Well, it already is something like fantastic, and it will only be more and more fantastic. So everybody, please keep your eyes and ears out for the progress of. I'm sorry. Now I'm getting carried away. I can't hear my. Now I don't have the headphones on. But really, yeah. You're the most badass of all the badass ladies.
Well, that's very sweet. But
so thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. I don't know. I feel like there have been so many people who were really formative and helpful to me, and even getting to New York or introducing me to so many things that I've always just felt compelled to organize as a means to, like, I don't know. I always had access to spaces or people who were willing to give me space, so I was like, I guess I should.
Yeah, but that
bring all
came
these other
from
people
your
with
inner
me.
drive, a lot of people have the same opportunities and don't have that inclination to connect people. Not only has she connected many people artistically, but she's also created numerous romantic relationships. She's a matchmaker of many types. Anyway,
you heard it here, folks.
It's true.
Well, thank you.
Watch out, San Diego.
Yeah. Wah, wah. Speaking of matchmaking, so thanks, Michelle.
I feel like I drew it out too long. You can edit that down a little bit.
We'll see what happens with that. But I do have to announce what's going on next week with A Cups. And if you are a regular listener or not, you can go to our Tumblr, acups.tumblr.com. This is actually the second to last A Cups of the A Cups season until I come back to New York and hopefully start up with Ann again. But next week we have Chris Gethard, one of my personal heroes, veteran improv performer, comedian, and community facilitator. He has this great public access show called The Chris Gethard Show. Very excited to have him next week. And I have lots of stuff coming up to plug, but now I'm so embarrassed that I can't do it.
Do it!
But I am in Sally's show, so she already said the date for that, and I'll just say other stuff next week. Woo! Yay! Thanks again, Michelle and Sally, for coming.
Thank you.
And spending this long evening with me. Yoo-hoo.
Thank you.
Yay! Hey guys!